Hey guys, it's me, Lonnie Clark, Nuts for Art. I'm going to be reading more of our citizens. Look at the back of the book. That is even more infuriating, isn't it? This is the front. The Citizens Radiation, I can't quite figure out the, there. Citizens Radiation Data Map of Japan. Check that out. Wow. Okay, so I guess I outed myself as a juggler. An odd juggler, I guess. I hope you enjoyed that. And I want to thank my listeners and my subscribers for commenting on the last video about this part 1. It really matters to me. It's kind of like a life, what do you call those things, those circle things, like a life vest. It's not a life vest, but, you know, a circle ring that keeps me from drowning in the sea of abyss of knowing all this stuff in my head. And it's kind of like you can't undo it, right? Once you know it, you can't unknow it. And I think it's really important for us to know what's going on. We're living in a big, gigantic science, a failing science experiment, I might say. But wouldn't it be awesome if we could like figure out a way to start a national movement to stop the 2020 Olympics? That would be awesome. So I'm going to keep on reading this, and maybe over the course of the next week or so as I'm reading it, some of you guys can comment and we can figure out how to create a coalition of people who will become vociferous about stopping the 2020 Olympics. So I'll be in if anybody wants to come up with an idea on how we could organize it and get millions of people to say, hell no, we won't go. So... do I take off my glasses or do I read with my little bumper glasses on top? I think I'll read with my bumper glasses on top. Oh, Lord, I'm not going to read like that. That is really definitely not healthy for my eyes. When carrying out our activities, the word contamination has caused us a lot of anxiety. Over the course of our work, we began to wonder if it might be possible to not use the phrase radioactive contamination in the book. When we carry out measurements of cesium-134 and cesium-137, we get results showing how many becquerels are present. However, if we say this land is contaminated, then wouldn't we be hurting the feelings of the people who live there, as well as the people who work in the rice fields, the vegetable fields, the farms, and the mountains? These thoughts never ceased to cross our minds. We heard people saying such things as, I don't want to think about radioactivity anymore, or I've decided to live as if there were no radioactivity. And we realized how much the thought of radioactive contamination was affecting their well-being. Kind of like us, right? So after careful consideration and debate, we decided not to use the word contamination in the Japanese title of this book. However, for the contents of the book, we could not ignore the fact that the nuclear accident spread radiation, and it was with a heavy heart that we had to spell out the facts and use the word contamination throughout the text. So they have pictures here. I'm going to show you this. One is the Fukushima Daiichi Nuclear Power Plant, Unit 4 on March 11th. And then the middle picture is a monitoring post in Naime Town on January 2017 with people in nuclear sites. And then there are temporary storage site for radioactive waste in Shirakawa City, August of 2018. And oh my gosh, wait till you see these pictures, you guys. That is the Daiichi plant number 4. That's the people in their radioactive things right next to a monitor. And then look at that field. That is what got strewn all over the place in that latest typhoon. Just imagine what that latest typhoon did to that field of dirt and contamination. Wow. So the next subtitle is called Why Measure in Becquerels? How did the Japanese government measure radiation after the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant accident? To start, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology, the English acronym is MEXT, MEXT, and the Japanese Nuclear Regulatory Agency conducted aerial measurements at an altitude of approximately 300 meters above sea level and calculated the air dose rate in sieverts. Then they averaged the air dose rates at 1 meter above the ground in a diameter of 300 meters to 600 meters. Finally, they estimated the deposition amount of radioactive cesium becquerels on the surface of the ground, and then use these estimated figures to establish their soil contamination map. Does that make sense? On top of the fact that these were estimated values based on supposition, on the government-published contamination map, there is no distinction for contamination below 10,000 becquerels per square meter. Therefore, for any value less than this amount, there is no raw data that we can use to confirm detailed contamination. It was for this reason that the data site felt the need to launch a project that directly collect and measure the soil using becquerels. So this also says, data site is also asked why we decided to measure soil radioactivity contamination in becquerels per kilogram, from here on referred to as becquerels, even though the Japanese government only measures the air dose rate, from here on referred to as sieverts. Oh, okay, that was their explanation that I just read below. So the sieverts, finally they estimated the deposition of the radioactive cesium in becquerels. That means becquerels per kilogram on the surface of the ground. And then use these estimated figures to publish their soil contamination. So they never really tested. They just tested the air. They just guessed. This is where the F word starts falling out of my mouth. I don't know about you guys, but they just guessed. There's absolutely no data. Okay, so then this is the pictures below. It says Japanese government's soil measuring method. It shows a picture of the nuclear power plant, and it says 1 meter equals 1.9 yards equals 3.28 feet, and 1 meter equals 100 centimeters. So I'm going to show you this. That's the picture of the nuclear power plant, right? And if I could see from here to there, I could read what it says on that page, but I have to turn it back around and read it because I can't read a single letter on that page from here. So then the middle one has a picture of the helicopter that says 150 to 300 meters above the ground, and that's the ground level. This is how they measured. This is incomprehensible. So then they measured the data, the aerial survey analysis software. They put it into a computer. And then they decided to look at the ground level here, 300 to 600 diameters. And then they decided this soil was radioactive contamination. So they were 150 meters above the ground, looked at this, and then they said, oh, that's how much radiation is in there. They didn't even test it. What the? Honestly, this is where I start cussing. So I'm going to go on to the next page here. Using citizen simple measurement devices to measure sieverts. During an emergency, sieverts are useful for determining how much radioactivity has turned up at any given location, and are also the sole important measuring unit to determine how much one is being exposed to radiation at any given time, or how much the area around someone has been contaminated. Unfortunately, when measuring sieverts, More than just radionuclides derived from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant accident are displayed on the screen. In addition to this radiation, the total value of nuclides from past nuclear weapons testing, nuclides derived from the Chernobyl accident, and radiation derived from uranium and thorium and other natural nuclides are also all detected and displayed. Trends seen in highly contaminated zones. For a long period of time after the Fukushima Daiichi, for a long time, man, I keep wanting to make up my own sentences. Sorry. For a long period of time after the Fukushima accident, in highly contaminated spaces, radiation came flying from all over and was detected by measurement devices. Gamma rays, which fly through the air, do not easily decay, and only after 200 meters are they finally cut in half. In extreme cases, when faraway mountains are heavily contaminated, more radiation is detected from gamma rays emitted in the mountains than from gamma rays being emitted from directly below one's feet. As a result, radiation from sources other than in the soil in the immediate vicinity can be a dominant cause of error. Trends seen in low pollution zones. In areas where there are low levels of contamination, even though the contamination is much less than in highly contaminated areas, there are still acres and acres of land contaminated with soil which contain radiation levels above 100 becquerels per kilogram. This soil would have been placed into yellow drum cans and classified as low-level radioactive waste had the contamination occurred prior to the Fukushima accident. However, it should be noted that it is not possible to detect these low levels of radiation when measuring in sieverts from above the ground. Only by directly measuring the soil using becquerels is it possible to detect such low-level contamination. Thank God for these people in Japan. The importance of knowing soil radiation levels. Due to the above-mentioned trends, even if one were to draw a map of ground contamination from radiation derived from the nuclear power plant using sieverts, or if you were to estimate the future state of contamination, you would not be able to fully understand the accurate contamination in each unique location, nor would it be possible to propose concrete countermeasurements. By using a specialized device to measure in becquerels and then calculate the attenuation of radioactive substances absorbed and captured in the soil, it was possible to find out exactly how much of each nuclide came from the Fukushima accident. A high priority of this project was to measure the amount of cesium-134, which has a half-life of 2 years. By only measuring cesium-137, which has a half-life of 30 years, it would have been very difficult to differentiate between radioactivity derived from previous nuclear weapons tests and radioactivity derived from the Fukushima accident. I'm trying to absorb that, which they just said. A high priority was to measure the amount of cesium-134, which has a half-life of 2 years. By only measuring cesium-137, which has a half-life of 30 years, it would have been very difficult to differentiate between radioactivity derived from previous nuclear weapons tests and activity derived from the Fukushima Daiichi plant accident. With those time constraints, and by sampling a large area and conducting measurements, it was possible to do a becquerel attenuation correction calculation for every measuring spot, which made it possible to carry out a comparison of each spot and thus draw an even more accurate contamination map. The reason we thought it was necessary to conduct soil measurements over such a wide area and for a period of 3 years is that we wanted to measure the real state of radioactive contamination caused by the Fukushima accident and leave a record of radiation diffusion to future generations. That's if we have future generations. The fact that we have been able to publish a map with the estimated cesium contamination 100 years from now, while the Japanese government has not been able to do so, is one of the biggest achievements of our Becquerel measurement project. Bravo. And yes, it is. So I am going to show you the Mina no data sites measuring soil methods. So this bottom of this page has some pictures that shows you what they did. So 10 centimeters, sifting, packing, shipping. Okay, so unfortunately, because I'm blind as a bat, I'll just show this to you. Let me put my glasses on and see if I can read it backwards, because this is interesting. So what they did was this. They went out in the land and dug up 1 liter of dirt. They went 5 centimeters by 20 by 10 centimeters, and that equaled a liter of dirt. They took the dirt out. Look at the little people they have. And then they sifted the dirt, and then they packaged and shipped it, and then they analyzed it. So this is compared to what the Japanese government did. Basically looked at the dirt and decided, okay, well, we're up 300 feet above the ground, and we're going to take a look and see what it is. So actually, they really did produce a more accurate method of sampling than the Japanese government. With all of its billions of dollars, these people, human beings, citizens, actually created a more accurate map, which is why the map looks like this. This is what the map looks like. And that was before the Higibus typhoon. And I actually see that we're at 17 minutes in. So I am going to stop because I don't want to make this too long. But I really appreciate all of you guys. I want to tell you thank you again. Please like, share, and subscribe. Let's pass this, at least these videos around so people can actually understand the nature of the lying going on from the Japanese government and actually every government. And I guess it really starts with the United States government, who actually runs the whole doggone show, right? With the International Atomic Energy and the bankers and all the people. So I actually just realized I'm wearing a vest and a hoodie and 3 shirts underneath me. I guess I live in Oregon. Anyways, you guys, put your courage feet on. I will talk to you soon, tomorrow night. And I really appreciate you. Thank you for being my lifeline. Ciao.